My child, stay with me for a moment. There is something you have been carrying that you have tried to make look smaller than it really is. You told yourself you could handle it. You kept moving. You answered people when they asked if you were all right. You smiled when you needed to. But when the room became quiet and no one was watching, the weight returned. I saw that moment. I saw the way your thoughts became louder at night. I saw you wondering why something you prayed about has remained unchanged. I saw you question whether you had missed my direction, disappointed me, or wandered too far to hear me clearly. But listen carefully. The reason I am drawing your heart closer right now is not to frighten you. It is because you have been living with a misunderstanding that is slowly stealing your peace. You thought my silence meant distance. You thought the delay meant rejection. You thought the closed door meant I had stopped listening. But before you reach the end of this message, there is something you need to understand about the season you are walking through. Something that may change the way you see the prayers you thought had been forgotten. You have been stronger than people realize. There are responsibilities you carry without speaking about them. There are people you worry about when you should be resting. There are conversations you replay because you wonder what you could have said differently. There are decisions ahead of you, and sometimes you are afraid of making the wrong one. You have prayed for clarity. You have asked me to show you what to do. And when the answer did not come in the way you expected, you began searching for explanations inside yourself. Maybe I did not pray with enough faith. Maybe I waited too long. Maybe I made too many mistakes. Maybe God is helping everyone except me. My child, I know those thoughts. I know the disappointment you rarely admit. I know the prayer you stopped mentioning because repeating it began to hurt. I know what it feels like when you watch someone else receive what you have been waiting for. You want to celebrate with them, but somewhere deep inside, a quiet question rises. When will it be my turn? Hear what I am saying to your heart. Your waiting is not proof that you have been abandoned. There are moments when you stand before a closed door and assume nothing is happening because you cannot see what is taking place on the other side. But a closed door can hide preparation. Silence can protect you from moving too soon. Waiting can reveal what hurried answers would never teach you. Think of Joseph. There was a time when his life seemed to move in the opposite direction of everything he had been shown. He carried dreams, yet he found himself betrayed. He remained faithful, yet he was falsely accused. He helped others, yet he was forgotten. From the darkness of that prison, his circumstances could have looked like evidence that heaven had said no, but the story was not finished. The place that looked like delay became part of the road that prepared him for responsibility he could not yet see. And this is where you must listen closely. Do not compare your current chapter with the promise you are still waiting to understand. You are looking at what has not happened. I am also concerned with what is happening within you. You asked for a new season, but are you ready to enter it without carrying the wounds of the old one? You asked for peace, but you are still trying to control every outcome. You asked for direction, but part of you is afraid to release the path you already chose in your mind. Sometimes the answer you seek cannot be received until your hands are open, and opening your hands can feel like losing control. That is why this season has exhausted you. You have been praying and planning at the same time, trusting and worrying at the same time, surrendering one day and taking everything back the next morning. I do not condemn you for this. I know fear makes you reach for control. I know disappointment makes you protect your heart. I know waiting can make even faithful people wonder if they have been forgotten. But there is a difference between being forgotten and being formed. A seed beneath the ground may appear to have disappeared. There is no applause beneath the soil, no visible evidence, no immediate fruit, only darkness, only pressure, only waiting. Yet hidden beneath the surface, roots are reaching deeper, and without those roots, the future growth could not survive the storms that would come later. My child, some of the deepest work in your life will happen where no one can congratulate you. It happens when you choose to pray again after disappointment, when you refuse to let bitterness become your identity, when you forgive even though the memory still hurts, when you keep your heart tender after someone treated your kindness carelessly, when you wake up and take another faithful step even though you still do not understand the entire road. That hidden faith matters. And there is something else you need to understand. You have been asking me to change the situation, but part of what I am doing is changing the way the situation controls you. There was a time when one unanswered message could destroy your peace. One person's rejection could make you question your worth. One delay could convince you that everything was falling apart. But you are learning, slowly, painfully, quietly. You are learning that peace cannot depend on everyone understanding you. You are learning that your worth cannot be measured by who stayed and who walked away. You are learning that faith is not pretending you have no questions. Faith is bringing your questions into my presence and refusing to run from me simply because you do not understand my timing. If these words are touching a place you have struggled to explain, you may write, "I will trust God in the waiting," in the comments as a quiet declaration of faith. But stay with me, because the misunderstanding I need to correct goes even deeper. You have been measuring my presence by visible progress. When things move, you believe I am near. When doors open, you believe I am answering. When relief comes quickly, you believe your prayers were heard. But what happens when nothing changes? What happens when the person you prayed for still seems distant? When the opportunity disappears? When your strength feels smaller than yesterday? When you ask for a sign and the morning arrives looking exactly like the day before? This is where many hearts become discouraged. Not because they stopped believing in me, but because they began believing that my love must always look like immediate relief. Consider Elijah. After standing courageously in a moment of great victory, he became exhausted, afraid, and overwhelmed. He ran into the wilderness and sat beneath a tree, believing he could not continue. Notice what happened. He was not met first with a lecture. He was given rest. He was given food. He was allowed to recover. Then, later, he encountered my presence not in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire, but in the quietness that followed. Do you see what this means for you? You have been searching for a dramatic answer while I have been teaching you to recognize the quiet ways I sustain you, the strength to survive one more difficult day, the person who called when you needed encouragement, the verse that remained in your mind when fear returned, the restraint that kept you from making a decision out of anger, the unexpected peace that came for a few minutes in the middle of uncertainty. You called those things small, but what if they were evidence that you were never walking alone? My child, the urgent thing I need you to understand is this. You are in danger of calling yourself abandoned simply because the story has not reached the part you were expecting. And if you continue interpreting every delay as rejection, you may miss what I am trying to heal, strengthen, and prepare within you, because the answer you have been waiting for is connected to something deeper. And until you understand what that is, you may keep asking me to open a door that your heart is not yet ready to walk through. You have wondered why preparation must take so long. You have asked why I could not simply give you the answer, change the situation, remove the obstacle, or make the path clear. But there are blessings that require more than desire. They require discernment. There are open doors that require wisdom to walk through. There are relationships that require healed boundaries. There are responsibilities that require patience. There are seasons of increase that require a heart no longer controlled by fear. You have been asking me to change what is around you, while I have been strengthening what is within you. And that is not rejection. That is love with a longer view than yours. My child, you see the pain of today. I see what this pain could become if it remains unhealed. You see the door that closed. I see what you might have lost by forcing yourself through it. You see the person who walked away. I see the part of your identity that had become dependent on being chosen by them. You see the delay. I see the roots growing beneath the ground. This is why you must be careful not to call every disappointment an unanswered prayer. Some prayers are answered through removal, some through redirection, some through the strength to endure what you once thought would destroy you, and some answers arrive so quietly that you only recognize them when you look back and realize you are no longer the person who first began praying. Think of Hannah. She carried a longing so deep that words could no longer express it properly. She entered the presence of God with grief that others misunderstood. Even Eli thought her sorrow was something it was not, but her pain had not made her invisible. Her tears were not proof that she had been forgotten. Her waiting did not mean her prayer was meaningless. And there is something in Hannah's story that your heart needs today. She brought her deepest desire honestly before God. She did not pretend the pain was smaller. She did not hide behind religious language. She poured out her soul. My child, when was the last time you prayed without trying to sound strong? When was the last time you stopped telling me what you thought you should say and simply told me what was hurting? You have been careful with your words. You have tried to remain grateful. You have reminded yourself that others are suffering too, and all of that may come from a sincere heart. But gratitude does not require pretending. Faith does not require emotional silence. You can trust me and still tell me that you are tired. You can believe and still admit that you are confused. You can worship and still ask why this season has lasted so long. I am not afraid of your questions. I am not disappointed by your tears. I do not move away when your prayer becomes nothing more than silence. Sometimes, silence is the most honest prayer a wounded heart can offer. Stay here with me, because this is where the message begins to touch the real wound beneath your waiting. You thought you were only waiting for an answer, but beneath that answer, you were also waiting for reassurance. You wanted to know that you still mattered. You wanted evidence that your life had not been overlooked. You wanted something to happen that would prove your faith had not been wasted. And when nothing changed quickly, you began to question more than the situation. You began questioning yourself. Maybe I am not worthy. Maybe I ruined my chance. Maybe my mistakes disqualified me. Maybe I am too old now. Maybe I waited too long. Maybe everyone else has moved forward, and I am the only one still standing here. My child, comparison has made your waiting heavier than it needed to be. You looked at someone else's harvest and forgot that you never saw their winter. You saw their open door, but you did not see the years of preparation before it opened. You saw their celebration, but you did not hear the prayers they whispered when no one was watching. Do not use another person's timeline as evidence against my faithfulness in your life. You are not late because someone else arrived first. You are not forgotten because someone else received something different. You are not less loved because your path contains a longer road. But I need you to release the habit of watching everyone else's journey so closely that you lose the ability to recognize what I am doing in yours. There is a reason comparison steals peace. It teaches you to judge unfinished stories, and your story is still unfinished. The chapter you are standing in is not the conclusion. The silence is not the conclusion. The closed door is not the conclusion. The disappointment is not the conclusion. Even your mistakes are not the conclusion when they are placed honestly before me. But there is something you must stop doing. You must stop returning to the same place where your peace was broken and expecting it to give you the closure only I can provide. You keep replaying the conversation. You keep imagining what you should have said. You keep wondering whether one different decision would have changed everything. You keep reopening the wound to check whether it still hurts. And then you ask why you cannot heal. My child, healing does not mean forgetting. It means the memory no longer has permission to control your direction. There are things you will remember without returning to them. There are people you can forgive without inviting them back into the same place of influence. There are seasons you can honor without trying to live in them again. There are questions you may not receive complete answers to, yet you can still walk forward with peace. You have been waiting for understanding before surrender. But sometimes, surrender comes first. You place the unanswered question in my hands. You admit that you cannot change what happened. You release your demand to know every reason. And then, slowly, peace begins entering the room where regret once lived. Think of Peter. He knew the pain of failure. He had promised courage, yet fear overcame him. He denied Jesus at the very moment he wanted to prove his loyalty. Imagine the weight of that memory, the shame, the regret. The question of whether his failure had destroyed his future. But after the resurrection, Jesus did not meet Peter only with condemnation. He restored him. He gave him responsibility. He called him forward. Peter's failure became part of his story, but it was not allowed to become the final definition of his life. Hear this carefully. You are spending too much time trying to rewrite yesterday. I am calling you to become faithful with today. You cannot return and make every decision perfectly. You cannot force someone to understand your intentions. You cannot recover every opportunity that was lost, but you can stop allowing regret to consume the strength you need for the next step. If you know someone who has been quietly blaming themselves for what they cannot change, share this message with them. Sometimes a heart needs permission to believe that its story can continue. My child, I need you to see what is happening now. You came here thinking the urgent message was about something outside you. A door, an answer, a relationship, a breakthrough, a change in circumstances. But the deeper urgency is within your heart. You have been surviving for so long that you began treating exhaustion as normal. You have been carrying uncertainty for so long that anxiety began to feel like responsibility. You have been trying to predict every possible outcome because you believed being prepared for disappointment would protect you from pain. But fear cannot protect your heart. It can only keep your heart from resting. You were not created to live every day bracing for what might go wrong. You were not asked to solve tomorrow before you finish walking through today. You were not called to carry every person you love as though their future depended entirely on your ability to control it. There are burdens you must place down, not because you no longer care, but because you finally understand that caring and controlling are not the same thing. This is the next truth you must receive. The answer you have been seeking may not begin with something being added to your life. It may begin with something being released. And the question is no longer only, when will my circumstances change? The question now is this: what are you still holding that you know you cannot carry into the peace you have been asking for? My child, do not rush past that question. What are you still holding that you cannot carry into the peace you have been asking for? Is it the need to know exactly how everything will turn out? Is it the anger you keep feeding because releasing it feels like saying the pain did not matter? Is it the guilt of a decision you made when you did not know what you know now? Is it the fear that if you stop worrying, something terrible will happen because you were not prepared? Or is it the prayer you have quietly stopped believing I could answer? Hear what I am saying to your heart. You do not have to release everything perfectly tonight. You only need to become honest about what is exhausting you. Bring me the fear you keep hiding beneath responsibility. Bring me the disappointment you buried beneath gratitude. Bring me the questions you are afraid to say aloud. Bring me the anger you thought a faithful person was not allowed to feel. Bring me the part of your heart that is tired of waiting. I would rather receive your honest weakness than watch you continue performing strength while breaking inside. You have spent too much time believing that you must become stronger before you come closer. But closeness is where strength is renewed. A thirsty person does not wait until the thirst disappears before coming to water. A wounded person does not need to pretend the wound is healed before asking for help. And you do not need to solve your entire life before resting in my presence. Come as you are. Come tired. Come uncertain. Come with the prayer you have repeated 100 times. Come with the prayer you can no longer find words to pray. Come with nothing but your willingness to stay. Because this is where the deepest revelation of this message begins. You thought I needed to see you urgently because something terrible was about to happen. But I was calling you closer because something was already happening within you. Your heart was becoming tired. Your peace was becoming dependent on answers. Your faith was becoming tangled with deadlines. Your identity was becoming attached to outcomes. And slowly, without realizing it, you began believing that if the situation did not change, you could never be at peace again. That is the misunderstanding I needed to correct. Peace is not the reward you receive after every problem disappears. Peace is what allows you to remain rooted while the storm is still passing. The disciples once found themselves in a boat while a violent storm surrounded them. Waves entered the boat. Fear filled their hearts, and Jesus was there. The presence of the storm did not mean the absence of Christ, but fear made the disciples forget who was with them, and perhaps you have done the same. You looked at the size of the problem. You looked at the uncertainty of tomorrow. You looked at what the doctor said. You looked at the bills. You looked at the distance in the relationship. You looked at the silence after your prayer, and you asked, "Where are you, God?" My child, I was closer than your fear allowed you to recognize. I was with you when you cried and wiped your face before anyone entered the room. I was with you when you received the message that changed your entire day. I was with you when you sat in the car for a few extra minutes because you did not have the strength to go inside. I was with you when you opened your Bible and could barely concentrate. I was with you when your prayer consisted of nothing more than my name. I was with you, not only when you were strong, not only when you believed without questions, not only when you worshipped with confidence. I was with you when your faith felt like a small flame struggling against the wind. And I did not despise that small flame. I protected it. I sustained it. I gave you enough strength for one more morning, enough courage for one more conversation, enough grace to keep your heart from becoming completely hardened, enough hope to keep you from closing the door on prayer. You called it survival, but you did not survive alone. Now I need you to understand something about the answer you have been waiting for. Not every prayer is answered by giving you exactly what you requested. Sometimes the answer is a different direction. Sometimes the answer is protection from something you could not see. Sometimes the answer is strength that develops slowly. Sometimes the answer is wisdom to recognize that what you desperately wanted would not have given you the peace you imagined. And sometimes the answer is still unfolding. This is difficult for you because you want certainty. You want to know whether the door will open, whether the relationship will be restored, whether the situation will improve, whether the person you love will change, whether the years ahead will be easier than the years behind you. I know, but faith has never meant possessing every answer. Faith means knowing where to place the questions. Place them here. Place them in my hands. You do not have to understand everything to trust me with something. Start with today. Start with the next decision. Start with the next prayer. Start with the next act of forgiveness. Start with the next boundary you know you need to establish. Start with the next moment when fear tells you to imagine the worst, and choose instead to remember that you have not been abandoned. Small steps of faith are still faith. A whisper can still be a prayer. Rest can still be obedience. Waiting can still be movement when your roots are growing deeper. My child, look at how far you have already come. There were days you thought would destroy you, but you are still here. There were losses you thought you could never carry, yet somehow, breath by breath, you continued. There were nights when you had no idea how you would face the morning, but morning came, and so did enough grace for that day. Do not insult your journey by calling yourself weak simply because it has been difficult. Strength is not never becoming tired. Strength is knowing where to return when you have nothing left. And now, return to me. Not to demand an immediate explanation, not to bargain, not to compare your life with someone else's. Return because your heart needs rest. Return because you have carried enough. Return because you were never meant to become your own savior. There are things only time will reveal. There are questions whose answers will become clear later. There are doors you may one day thank me for keeping closed. There are disappointments you will eventually understand as redirection. There are parts of your story you cannot interpret correctly while you are still standing in the middle of them. An unfinished painting can look like meaningless colors. An unfinished house can look like disorder. An unfinished road can look like it leads nowhere. But unfinished does not mean abandoned. And you, my child, are still being formed. This season is not the final statement over your life. Your disappointment does not own the ending. Your failure does not own the ending. The person who rejected you does not own the ending. The delay does not own the ending. Fear does not own the ending. And neither does the unanswered question. So stop trying to force a conclusion while I am still writing the next chapter. Breathe, rest, pray again. Not because you have received everything you asked for, but because you are beginning to understand that my presence is not measured by how quickly circumstances change. This is what I needed you to see. You thought I had become distant because the answer was delayed, but I was present in the waiting. You thought the closed door meant I had forgotten you, but I was protecting, redirecting, or preparing in ways you could not yet understand. You thought your weakness disappointed me, but your weakness became the place where you finally stopped pretending you could carry everything alone. You thought you needed a complete explanation before you could have peace. But peace begins when you place what you cannot understand into hands greater than your own. And now, my child, there is one final thing I ask of you. Do not leave this moment and immediately pick up every burden you just considered releasing. Do not return to the same cycle of imagining every disaster before it happens. Do not spend tonight rehearsing conversations that may never take place. Do not allow tomorrow's uncertainty to steal the mercy available to you today. When fear returns, speak honestly. Say, God, I do not understand this, but I will not walk through it without you. When regret returns, remember that grace calls you forward. When comparison returns, bless the journey of others and return your attention to the path in front of you. When exhaustion returns, rest without shame. When prayer feels difficult, do not disappear. Stay, even if all you can say is, Lord, help me. That prayer is enough to begin again. If your heart has found comfort in this message, write, God, I place my unanswered prayers in your hands, in the comments. Let those words become a sincere expression of surrender. And if you want to continue receiving messages of faith, hope, and encouragement, you may. Subscribe and return whenever your heart needs to remember that waiting does not mean you are alone. Now, let us pray. Father, I bring before you the person listening right now. You know the burden they have carried. You know the prayer they have repeated. You know the disappointment they have hidden. You know the questions they cannot answer and the fears they have struggled to silence. Meet them in this moment with your peace. Give them wisdom for the decisions ahead. Give them courage to release what they cannot control. Help them forgive where forgiveness is needed. Help them establish boundaries where wisdom requires them. Teach them to wait without believing they have been forgotten. Remind them that their worth is not determined by rejection, comparison, success, failure, or the speed at which their circumstances change. When they feel weak, draw them closer. When they feel confused, guide the next faithful step. When they feel alone, remind them that your presence is not dependent on their emotions. When they become tired of praying, receive even their silence. Protect their hearts from bitterness. Protect their minds from fear that constantly imagines the worst. Give them the grace to live today without carrying tomorrow before it arrives. And if the answer they are waiting for is still unfolding, give them patience. If a door must remain closed, give them peace. If a new direction must be taken, give them courage. If healing requires time, give them endurance. And through every season, teach them to recognize the quiet ways you are sustaining them. Amen. My child, you came here carrying a question. You wanted to know whether you had been forgotten. You wanted to know whether the silence meant I had turned away. You wanted to know whether the delay was proof that your prayer no longer mattered. Now carry this truth with you. You do not need every answer tonight. You do not need to know how every situation will end. You do not need to force open every door. You do not need to carry every person you love. You do not need to punish yourself forever for yesterday. What you need is the courage to place this unfinished chapter into my hands. The road ahead may not become clear all at once, but you can walk it one faithful step at a time. The answer may not arrive in the form you expected, but you can remain open to wisdom, redirection, growth, and grace. The waiting may continue for a season, but you do not have to wait without hope. So when you leave this moment, leave lighter, not because every problem has disappeared, but because you finally remembered that you were never asked to carry the whole story by yourself. Give me what you cannot fix. Trust me with what you cannot predict. Walk faithfully through what you can do today, and when tomorrow comes, meet me there again. You are not standing at the end of your story. You are standing in a chapter that has not yet revealed everything it is preparing you to understand. Stay close. Keep your heart open. And when the road becomes quiet, do not mistake the silence for abandonment. Some of the deepest work happens where you cannot yet see it. You are still held. You are still heard. And you are still being led forward, one faithful step at a time.